So I've just finished playing through the much anticipated Sonic Frontiers, and as Sonic the Hedgehog is a character that is near and dear to my heart, it's about time I started talking about him, and what better way to start than with a fresh take on the franchise. I would like to compile and share my thoughts on the experience I had while journeying through the Starfall Islands. I'm going to keep it relatively spoiler free, so you can listen to my thoughts without worry if you wanted to go in blind. It's been a long wait since the last mainline outing, Sonic Forces, and there was a lot riding on Frontiers, being a fresh start with a brand new style of gameplay in the form of an open zone. But did it deliver and work well? It's time to go through the Cyberspace portal and find out. But just before we do, if you enjoy the video, please consider subscribing for more in the future. I would greatly appreciate it. So right off the bat, I want to briefly touch on the story and how it actually portrays the characters in a more mature way, which is a great improvement over how Sonic in particular has been portrayed in recent years. Thanks to Ian Flynn taking the helm, best known for his work on the Sonic comic series, the story itself feels like a continuation of the series as opposed to a disconnected adventure, and it achieves this by referencing events that happened in past games, both in dialogue and cutscenes, delivering base level fan service for those that have knowledge of the reference, and instilling curiosity in those unaware of Sonic's past adventures. The way that Sonic and his friends interact with each other over the course of the adventure is really nice to see, with a few heartwarming moments of empathy. Of course there are a few instances of quippy one-liners, but it's nice to see it toned down compared to past iterations, with more focus on relationships between them all and showing off an enjoyable dynamic interaction between them. If you're familiar with Sonic's voice actor from the past 12 years, you would have noticed a slight change in Roger Craig Smith's voice direction for Sonic Frontiers, which assists in making the overall tone feel less light-hearted compared to previous outings, also tying into the maturity aspect I mentioned prior. Although he doesn't get much screen time, Eggman displays a different side to himself throughout the game, during his cutscenes and interactions with the new character Sage, as well as in his voice memos that can be unlocked through a method that we'll touch on later. I enjoyed the story from beginning to end, however I did find that the final part of the game was a little bit underwhelming, and I'm sure that many that make it that far will understand why. And to keep things spoiler free, I'm going to leave it at that. The one critique I would give the cutscenes in the game is that the majority of it is just Sonic and friends standing around talking to each other, but at least the dialogue's entertaining enough to overlook it. Now it's time to get into the real meat of the game, where you'll be spending most of your time. The brand new take on the Sonic formula, the open world, or open zone as Sega likes to call it. Every island has beautiful scenery that keeps things engaging as you blitz through them. Each of the 3 main islands feel like a giant playground, full of things to play around on that makes great use of Sonic's speed and moveset. The ground to cover is plentiful for a character as fast as Sonic, and every direction you turn, there's something to do. Be it a puzzle, a platforming challenge, enemies, and guardian mini-bosses to fight. Getting from point A to B always felt fun because of the speed in which Sonic travels, and it barely ever felt like it took long to reach wherever you wanted to go. There are fast travel options that can be unlocked throughout the course of the game, but I never felt like I wanted to use it because traversal and exploration were engaging enough on their own, at least they were in the first couple of islands, but we'll touch on that later. Each of the activities holds a purpose and isn't just there for the sake of having something to do. Completion of puzzles will reward the player with an expansion of the map, which will uncover more collectibles and points of interest, as well as spawn new rails and platforms. While we're on the topic of puzzles, I'd like to mention that many of them do feel redundant as puzzles, as most don't require anything thought-provoking to complete. However, they do start to pick up a little the further you head into the game, which is nice. And perhaps this is for the best, as it doesn't ever become a point of frustration and keeps you moving along at a brisk pace to your next distraction. They never bored me and were enjoyable enough to complete. It just would have been nice to have some of the ones found in their later islands as the base level to be built up from, but that's just my own personal thoughts on them. While I really enjoyed the first and second islands, I felt a bit mixed on the third, and that's mainly due to the fact that many of the areas to explore are on isolated mini-islands, and traversing between them would often mean having to ride a rail and completing a 2D section just to get back to where you wanted to go, resulting in making progression feel linear in what up to that point has felt so non-linear. Sure, there are little skips you can take here and there, but having gaping bottomless pits between each of the main areas takes the risk levels to maximum on those tricky do-or-die jumps. And once you get locked in those 2D sections, there's no shortcuts you can take, as you have to take the path that the developer intended for you. Another thing that the 2D sections limits in the open world is the way in which you can approach the challenge ahead. Because you become locked into the 2D spline, it means you can't veer off and find fun new ways to approach the section, like you can in the 3D sections, which takes that open world freedom away from the player. You may have noticed by now that I've only been referencing 3 islands when the advertising touted 5, and I guess this could be considered minor spoiler territory, so this is my spoiler warning. So the final 2 islands consist of a platforming challenge island, which offers the same backdrop as the first island, which I did actually enjoy completing. However, getting between each of the challenges felt bland, as the world was devoid of anything besides the isolated challenges. The final island also had the same aesthetic as the first island, but at least that still had the usual activities that the first 3 islands contained. The platforming challenges scattered throughout the open zone almost always end with a memory token collectible, which you will need plenty of throughout your adventure, so you're always incentivized to explore these routes. They are a joy to run through, and increase in difficulty the further you progress through the game. They will have you grinding, dashing through trails of rings, homing attacking balloons and enemies along the way. Like the puzzles, these don't drag on for too long for the most part, which is great because you're never too far from the next one, and if you become skilled enough at manoeuvring around, you can usually time your landing onto another platforming challenge, or even a roaming guardian. Linking all these things together feels really satisfying, along with trying to find parts of the terrain that you can leap off for big airtime. Take a look at some of the examples I had during my time on the Starfall Islands. That's another thing that I really enjoyed about Sonic Frontiers, the desire to explore and find different ways of approaching something. It's what an open world game is great at doing, giving the player the choice and the tools to do something in their own way. Saying that, the platforming challenges do have their caveats, such as dash panels, springs and dash rings that want you to go a certain way. If you try to go about something in a way the developers didn't intend, then there are attempts to prevent that. But to counter that, you can usually jump over these things to bypass them, and the amount of rail momentum you can carry after jumping will be more than enough to get you to where you want to go, so the freedom is very much still there. The biggest concern I had from the trailers leading up to the release of the game was the movement in the open zone. Platformers in particular live or die by how movement feels, and instead of trying to tailor the perfect experience for the worlds that they had built, they left a decision of movement up to the player, a decision that I am personally very grateful for. It's not difficult to understand how hard it must be to control a character that can go as fast as Sonic, especially for younger players. This may actually be the fastest he has ever been in a game. From the start, you are given the choice between high-speed gameplay or action gameplay, which affects the top speed that Sonic can reach, and changes how boosting behaves. Alongside this, when you get into the game, you can tweak different parameters from the different attributes that all affect how Sonic controls. I personally had mine all at the maximum, and found movement to be really fluid and fun to control. The sense of speed in this game really does feel unparalleled. However, there are a few things that make movement feel a bit stop and go. When you light dash through a trail of rings, you will come to a dead stop at the end of the trail, which really breaks the fluidity. The same goes for letting go of the stick. You'll stop dead in your tracks when you do that. There needs to be a bit of momentum carryover for it to feel natural. I have a feeling this was done to stop players falling off the smaller platforms that exist in the open zone, but I think it could have been tweaked to feel a bit more natural. Sonic's new move, the Psy Loop, is a great new addition to his arsenal of moves, and is used for a multitude of things on the Starfall Islands, such as knocking enemies up to start combos, uncovering different secrets that each island has, generating rings, and even doing a bit of light weeding. Yeah, that's right, weeding. Who knew that drawing shapes on the ground could be so much fun? The drop dash, which was originally introduced in Sonic Mania, also has made its way into Sonic's moveset in this game, and it's pretty fun to use as a traversal tool here. If you gather enough rings to fill up your max capacity, if you thought Sonic was already fast, then boy, you are in for a treat, as this will send him into overdrive with a power boost, and I loved having it active. So much so that if I took damage and lost it, I would just loop up enough rings to make it active again. I was so addicted to that speed. Now let's talk about the enemies and combat in Sonic Frontiers. Combat is fun to engage with, moves look flashy and entertaining to watch, and oh man, those sound effects to go with it, they are so crispy, giving weight to each hit. Sonic even comes with a skill tree to unlock new combat moves which come in handy as you progress, although I did find that I maxed it out pretty quickly. Enemies are fun to fight majority of the time, but there are a few that stand out and become a pain, but luckily, most of the time, you can run away from a fight if you don't want to get involved with that particular enemy type. I'll give you a rundown of a couple of my most avoided fights. Shark. If you fail to destroy it after the first rodeo, then oh boy, you better buckle up for another round of bucking Broncos. You get dragged along, completing quick time events and waiting for your moment to attack. And those dogs, oh god, those dogs. If you spot them, stay away from them, because if you run anywhere close to them, they're going to interrupt the flow and lock you in a circle until you parry them to the floor. You can only run away after you've done that. Not difficult by any means, but pretty pace breaking. Majority of the rest of the enemies though are pretty fun to take out and require unique ways of tackling them, which I enjoyed, so no other complaints here. During your time on the Starfall Islands, as you defeat enemies and complete challenges, you'll constantly be gathering a plethora of collectibles to progress. The memory tokens that I mentioned earlier, XP from defeating enemies to upgrade your skill tree, portal gears from Guardians to unlock Cyberspace portals, Chaos Emerald gate keys, blue and red seeds to upgrade your attack and defense, purple coins for fishing, and these cute little creatures called Coco which can upgrade your speed and ring capacity. Upgrading is a simple procedure. Talk to each respective Coco leader to upgrade your stats. And there you go, that's it. At least that's the case for the attack and defense. For some reason, when it comes to upgrading your speed and ring capacity, it has to be done a single level at a time. Which means, to fully upgrade your speed and ring capacity, you're looking at sitting for 198 text box confirmations just to max out your stats. What an oversight. I'm confident that enough people will have a problem with this, and we'll see a quality of life update to make it so you can increase your level by a certain amount in one go. Silly me though, I've already sat there and done it, so it's not going to save me any time. Maybe on a second playthrough. Throughout the open zone, you have two main ways to progress. Method 1 involves taking down Guardians to grab portal gears, which unlock Cyberspace stages, and then completing the missions in those Cyberspace stages to unlock Chaos Emerald gate keys, which will then give you access to the Chaos Emeralds, rinse and repeat. Method 2 involves collecting purple coins, which are scattered across the map pretty sparsely from what I could tell, but there's a regular in-game event which will land you plenty more. Then you travel through the purple portal to find everyone's favourite feline, Big the Cat, to do a little bit of his favourite pastime, fishing. Each attempt at fishing will cost a certain number of these purple coins, and each item you reel in will net you a different number of fishing tokens, which in turn can be used to redeem against a number of different items, including but not limited to portal gears, Chaos Emerald gate keys, and those egg memos I mentioned at the beginning of the video, which again gives into the open world philosophy of leaving things up for player choice, which is great. I'm looking forward to the speedrun categories that Sonic Frontiers will bring. Each of these two methods also involve collecting each character's memory tokens, which in the open world you can do with the platforming challenges. You can also redeem the memory tokens in Big's fishing minigame. Most of the Chaos Emeralds are gathered using the keys that you collect, but there are a few that are locked behind minigames which can be accessed by progressing with characters and giving them their respective memory tokens. I really enjoyed this as they were mostly varied and provided a refreshing change of pace, and they kept things exciting, reminding me of a few different things as I encountered them. Although one of these minigames they latched onto it a little bit too much, and those who have finished the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Back to the topic of cyberspace stages. I've noticed quite a bit of mixed reception to these stages. Some people enjoy them and some people don't. I personally feel that these are the weakest part of the game, for a number of reasons. For me, the big issue I have is Sonic's movement inside the cyberspace stages. I can understand wanting a uniform level of control for these as they are ranked on time, and allowing players to take their customized full speed into them would create an imbalance. But I can't help but think there could have been a better way. It's hard to describe, but Sonic just feels slower and rigid to control, and when you have been spending a good chunk of time controlling a buttery smooth Sonic, moving into cyberspace can just feel disjointing. Granted, the majority of levels are short, so you aren't battling with the controls for too long, and outside a select few levels, 1-2 comes to mind, I was getting the first time clear with all missions complete, leaving me without incentive to come back to them. It would have been nice to have a gradual increase in difficulty to keep me coming back and trying to shave off those seconds of time to obtain the S rank, and really feel the satisfaction of improving, which is the way I felt when I was going for the S rank in 1-2. If they were all like that, I think I would have had a better time with them. That's not to say that the cyberspace levels aren't fun though, because they are, and they do progressively become more enjoyable in the latter half of the game. It's just harder to enjoy them when there's been much better control for levels like these in previous games. Eagle-eyed fans will notice that most of the level layouts are borrowed from Sonic's previous outings, which are tied into the narrative of the game, resulting in tried and tested level design. I do commend the amount of cyberspace levels in the game, and upon completion of the game, arcade mode is unlocked, so you can play through them in a linear fashion like you would in a traditional Sonic game. I do have to admit I have enjoyed coming back to them post-game and looking for ways to improve my times, which is something I never felt compelled to do in Sonic Forces, although I do kind of wish this mode included a leaderboard to encourage me further to try and get better times. But as it stands, it's perfectly serviceable. It's a shame that there weren't a few more aesthetic changes to keep things fresh for the player, with there only being 4 environments across all cyberspace stages. Seeing Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary again and again has definitely worn itself out by now. We did get a nice new city theme at least. It's just a shame when you use Sonic's memory as a plot point, there are so many other places to pull from, but that's just me being nitpicky. The final main pillar of the Sonic Frontiers experience is the Titan bosses, and I just have to start by saying these are some of the most hype I have felt in any game, let alone a Sonic game. You know that feeling when you encounter perfect chaos in Sonic Adventure, and the final hazard in Sonic Adventure 2, with the high energy music? Well, that's what you're getting here, but you get it 4 times, and it's dialed up to 11 each time. The visuals are a treat for the eyes, and the accompanying music with vocals from Kellen Quinn, lead singer of Sleeping with Sirens, are incredible. My inner teenager was in awe the whole time. Overall, a great experience, and some of the Sonic series' greatest boss fights. It really had that Metal Gear Rising level of hype attached to it. The only real drawback I can think of in regards to these fights is the lack of grunts and voice lines from Sonic. He's gone from non-stop talking.
There's nothing the 3 of us can't achieve together. Victory is ours for the taking. Triple boost. I gotta take out the shield. Here's Sonic.
To nothing at all. There were definitely moments where I think a few grunts and cries from Sonic would have heightened the moment, but I guess you could theorize he's so focused on the fight at hand, he doesn't have time to talk. Unfortunately, there's no way to replay any of these fights without starting the game from the beginning again, which is such a shame. If an arcade mode was present for the cyberspace stages, then why couldn't there have been a boss rush too? This is something that I hope will be added in a post-launch update, because these fights are just too cool to experience just the once. I briefly touched on the music during the Titan fights, which again, let me stress, are so good. I never thought I would see the day where I would hear screaming in a Sonic game. That's next level stuff, and I want to see it come back in the future. But now it's time to get into the soundtrack as a whole, which long-time viewers of mine will know is one of my favourite aspects of a game. The musical fidelity on display is more than impressive, spanning many genres, from metal to EDM, as well as the atmospheric somber open world pieces. The lead composer Tomoya Otani stated that this was the largest Sonic track he had been in charge of so far, as every Guardian and Cyberspace stage had their own theme. The Cyberspace stages contain a variety of EDM and keep the player engaged as they speed through the levels, and I absolutely love most of them. The main downside to these levels is that it's hard to pinpoint a stage's music to its relative stage. Not because the music all sounds the same, but because you only cycle between the 4 environments. You might remember that a song belongs to a Green Hill stage, but which one? It's not so easy when the levels aren't unique, and this creates a disconnect with the player, meaning that it may be difficult to remember in the future, as in most cases you can usually pair a level with its theme immediately. Not only that, but because the levels don't last all that long, you can't always enjoy the full scope of the song. Nothing repeat playthroughs can't solve though. The music throughout the open zone is pleasant and provides calming melodies that are perfect for exploring to, and each unique island contains its own pieces and incorporates relevant instruments that complement the backdrop of each island. It's always a pleasure to have in the background as you traverse the islands, and when you enter battle with a guardian, the music shifts into battle mode, perfectly encapsulating the tense moments that are about to ensue. And the fact that each one has their own unique theme makes it all the more memorable. You've also got the upbeat music that plays when the minigames play out, and Big's lo-fi fishing beats are absolutely legendary. Seriously, just listen to this. And to echo my earlier thoughts on the sound effects, each time you connect with an enemy, the sound effects are so meaty, which makes combat all the more enjoyable. It's a great soundtrack overall, with plenty of variety in it. So those are my thoughts on Sonic Frontiers. I'm really impressed with what Sonic Team has come up with, and I really hope that they use this experience and take feedback to implement it into the next game. Build upon the template that you've created, and we'll be looking at another great Sonic adventure, maybe even the best. Part of me feels like Cyberspace was included as a way not to alienate returning fans and bridge the gap between gameplay styles, but I would like to see Cyberspace style levels remain part of the core gameplay loop, but only if the controls are tightened up to accommodate for this. I want to see brand new things in the future, all new environments and variety. No more Green Hill, no more Chemical Plant, we've had enough of that. The open zone Sonic formula is onto something special, and I can't wait to see what's next for Sonic. The future is bright, and with potential DLC on the way, this could pave the way for plenty more exciting things to come. More playable characters would be such a good addition. Imagine flying around with Tails, climbing with Knuckles, that would be such a great time. Despite the game's flaws and anticlimactic ending, I would wholeheartedly recommend this game. It's an entertaining experience from beginning to end, and has made the Sonic fan in me very happy. If you have played Sonic Frontiers, please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm interested to know what you thought about it. Do you agree or disagree with any of my points? And with that, I thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and leaving a like, as despite my inconsistent uploads, we have got more to come. And if you want to see anything in particular, let me know in the comments. Thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.